This podcast is made possible through donations from listeners like you and our partners at Tallman Equipment. They pride themselves on equipping their customers with the tools they need to get the job done right. They are dedicated to set the standard for quality, convenience, and reliability. At Tallman, your opinion is important to them. Rate and review any product or tool you've used on their new website at tallmanequipment.com. Line 11 Clothing Company, making apparel for their first responders with a positive message to patriots that you can be proud of. A proceed of the cost goes to helping our foundation ignite the fire for father engagement. Give them a follow at Line 11 Clothing on Instagram. You could also find them or email them at line11clothing@yahoo.com. And last but not least, Monzingo Knives. Each knife is created with craftsmanship that only a tradesman could provide. Find them on Instagram at Monzingo Knives and get your American-made Monzingo knife today. Welcome to the Show Up Dad podcast. This is a podcast for hardworking fathers. At the Show Up Dad, we recognize that fathers providing for their children is certainly important. But when men truly understand their unique role and gain the knowledge and skills to be great fathers, they can transform and impact future generations. Our guest today is none other than Michael J Loya. Michael is a journeyman lineman working in California. He has been married for 23 years. He has 4 kids, with the oldest being 26 and the youngest being 5. Welcome to the Show Up, Dad, brother.
Thank you, sir. Good morning.
Yeah. It's awesome to have you on here, Mike. Can I have you give our listeners a brief history of your family of origin, your father, your mother, and growing up and stuff like that?
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in West Covina. My dad and my mom met in high school at Western High School in Cypress. Mm-hmm. I'm the oldest of, we have 3 boys. I have 2 younger brothers. Our family, growing up, it was all about, camping, going to Yosemite, tents. We didn't have a lot of money, so it was a lot of camping, mm-hmm. A lot of tents, a lot of Coleman stoves and Coleman heaters, and dirt bikes. My dad was into dirt bikes, and so we were out at, the dry lake or out in Mojave or whatever, riding dirt bikes as a kid. That's all I remember. Dirt bikes, sports, and camping.
Yeah, that's a good childhood. I mean, I remember some of my fondest memories were going to Yosemite as well. I mean, such an awesome place.
Yeah.
But that's awesome, bro. It's good to hear that you're as rambunctious as I was. You know what I mean? How was that relationship with your father, if you can share with us?
So, my relationship, my dad was hardcore. Mm-hmm. It was always, there was no sleeping in on the weekends. Mm-hmm. It was always a project, whether we were pouring concrete, redoing the driveway, rebuilding the fence, pulling weeds, mowing the lawn. He always had me doing something. If I wasn't playing sports, we were doing a project around the house. Mm-hmm. So he was hard. He was very strict, traditional Mexican dad. So mm-hmm. he was on top of me. He had his thumb on me all the time.
Mm-hmm. And how did that affect you, do you think, in your life later on?
I don't know. I might have rebelled a little bit, my later years and my later teen years. I might have rebelled just a little bit, but, it was sports for me. It was baseball, junior All-American footballs, and he wanted to be a part of that. So, he would either coach. He didn't know much about baseball, but he would coach just so he could be a part of that. It was good. It was, he was a good guy. He was just hard. Like, he was just very strict. He had just, his rules were, this is what's going to happen. Mm-hmm. This is how it's going to be. And he wasn't afraid. I got spanked when I was a kid. I got spanked with a belt. I mean, mm-hmm. We all did growing up. And it was, I think he just taught, he instilled that work ethic. Mm-hmm. You don't have time to just be lazy. I think that's the good word, is lazy. He was not lazy. Mm-hmm. And I think I got that from him.
Now, looking back, Mike, just hearing your story, I mean, it resonates with me tremendously. Same exact thing in my life. My dad was hardcore. We used to call him the Machine. You know.
Yeah.
I think for me, sports was kind of a way to escape his iron rule, for lack of better words. Do you feel that was kind of your escape as well, just to find some sort of normalcy and balance?
100%. So here's I think I took to baseball more than any other sport because my dad didn't know baseball. And even though he was my coach and he would always be asked by, the other coaching staff just to be a part of the coaching staff so I could be on the team so that I didn't have to go through the draft. But I think I enjoyed that because it was the one time where I could tell him what to do, if that makes sense. It was the one time, that he didn't know much about baseball, the fundamentals of baseball, what everybody's supposed to do on every play. And I kind of had that on him. So that was the one time where I felt like, he would listen to me. If that makes sense.
No, absolutely. I mean, wow. Like I said, it was your control. You know what I mean? That was a part of your life that you could control in your life, and like for me, the same thing, wrestling was life for me. We traveled all over in a club team, I went to California, Oklahoma, we went all over the place for wrestling. And that was one of the things that I could control because you're on the mat by yourself. And for whatever reason, I shared this on another podcast. I remember one time my dad got mad at me because I didn't have my shirt tucked in. Because you had to have your shirt tucked in, right? Well, he tore my shirt off of me. I mean, just tore it. Told me, you look like a little girl. He ripped it. It's a brand new shirt. It's kind of big. He was the Colorado Buffaloes when they won the national championship against Notre Dame in I think it was like 1990 or something like that. Anyhow, long story short, he tore that shirt. So in a rebellious manner, I was wrestling, city championships against another kid who was really good. I was up on him on points, smoking him, no way I could lose, and I laid down, and I let him beat me. And I remember staring at my dad like, yeah, I'm in control. You know what I mean?
That's a good story.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy, dude. You know what I mean?
Moment.
Yeah.
Oh,
exactly.
Yeah.
And
that's a moment.
Yeah, and that's when I decided that I had control. You know what I mean? In that aspect.
Yeah.
But no.
I have a similar story with baseball. I was a catcher. And there was multiple times when we were up by a lot of runs, and I would tell the batters what pitch is coming. Loud enough for my dad to hear it. I would tell him what pitch was coming, and there was nothing he could do about it. So, yeah, I think what you're saying kind of hits home. It was a way for me to step out of my being controlled and have a little bit of control. It was, and I'm growing and learning, and I'm coming into my, my adolescent years and, my, later teen years. And I would tell the batters what was coming. I would just so they could hit it, so they could make the game, more interesting or whatever the case may be, just because, he didn't want me to do that. And I did it, and he knew I was doing it, and he couldn't stop me. And I think that was, so a very similar story.
Do you think that was the start of a rebellious root in your life? Like
no,
growing up?
No, I was never really, like, I didn't sneak out. I didn't skip class. I was always doing what I was supposed to do. But I didn't like him. He always had his thumb on me. He always had, I don't know. And then it was just my way, just same as you, you laid down on the mat. It was just my way of kind of saying, I can do this without you. And we can still win, I don't know.
No, that totally makes sense. I mean, that's such a great picture you painted there, you know what I mean, of what your father and you had experienced together, you know what I mean? Now looking back at that relationship, I wanted to ask you, Mike, what would you share to your children that your father had taught you?
Oh, that's easy. Work ethic.
Work ethic. Just
Yeah, nothing's free.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's free. I think work ethic, and you know, if you say you're going to do something, do it.
Mm-hmm.
If you agree to be a part of something, or you agree, you know, to help somebody, whatever the case may be, if you say yes, follow through.
Yes, let your yeses be yeses and your noes be noes. Exactly. I think
Right.
I think more people should actually listen to that and abide by it. I mean, how many times do you have people tell you, yeah, and then they ghost you? You know what I mean? And it's like,
Yeah.
it leaves me wondering, like, what the hell's wrong with this person? Did they have, you know, at least tell me to my face, you know, what the hell's wrong? It's not, what am I going to do? Choke you through the phone? You know what I mean? It's just, it kind of baffles me sometimes when it's easier for people to just run away. And I think that's just the culture we're in, because it's so easy to just block somebody on the phone. You know, back in the day, you couldn't do that stuff. You know, you'd have to either face that person, you know what I mean, or whatever. But I think this whole way we've gone with all this technology and everything, it's gotten easier for people to not be able to really reach connection. You know what I mean? They can and they can't. You know, it's their choice, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Well, you don't have to be true. You can be whoever you want to be behind a screen. There's no accountability.
Yep.
For the things you say, the things you do. You know, there's no accountability anymore. You can just be whatever you want, and you can't. It's hard. You know, I see my kids going through it. I see my kids on, you know, Instagram or, you know, whatever. You can be whoever you want. You can make up a persona. But there's no, when you post something, or when I read a post, even on Facebook, when you read something, you can't tell inflection. You can't tell tone of voice. You can't tell, you know, emphasis on certain words. You can't read that. So you lose a lot of the meaning, I think. You lose a lot of meaning when you communicate via social media, whatever the case may be, whether you're, you know, wishing somebody a happy birthday or trying to comfort somebody in a time of need. I think the human interaction, I think, is huge. And we had that growing up, right? I didn't have a cell phone until I was, you know, 30-something years old.
Yeah.
So, you know, it was always, you know, we didn't have Google Maps. It was Thomas guys. But, you know, it's with all this social media, you can say whatever you want and there's no repercussions. Whereas before it was a face-to-face conversation and you had to be held accountable for the things that you said and the things that you did. And I think we've lost a little bit of that.
Absolutely. It's definitely made our culture so detached from reality. You know what I mean? One story I wanted to share with you is I had this line daddy, okay, and he became my, you know, GF and everything else, you know, and I pushed crews for him. And one of the things he always says is, you know, it's when you go to a bar and you got somebody mother effing you to your face, right? It's a different story. You can forgive that because they're drunk. But at 7 o'clock in the morning and they're doing the same thing, those are fighting words. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how everything's changed. You know what I mean? It's different when you're up against that person, when you're in their face, and, you know, it takes a lot of guts to be able to face somebody and tell them stuff like that. You know what I mean? Versus on social media, where you can do whatever you want to, you can say, and if they don't like it, well, bleep, you know, swipe left or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's definitely a detachment of our culture for sure, and I think it's affecting our youth as well. You know,
But how do we get that back?
I think, personally, I think we just need to instill it in our kids, within our own families. You know, instill that value. One of the things I do is, yeah, exactly. Everything starts at home. And one of the things we do is we eat at the table. That's one thing that we did as a child growing up, you know. We hashed out our problems at the table, yelling, screaming, whatever, but we were at the table talking, you know, eating dinner. And you don't see that anymore. You know, you even go to a restaurant and you can count everybody from the father, the wife, to the kids, all the way down. Everybody has a phone. No one's talking when they're at a restaurant.
I see that all the time.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's where we've lost it. You know what I mean? That whole round table, that togetherness, that sharing your stories, you know, asking how your day went. I mean, that's what my dad used to do. You know, no matter what, he would always say, well, how did your day go? You know, what happened today? Did you get punched in the face? Did you do good in school? You know, what happened? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, and that's how our dads were back in the day. You know what I mean? That's, you know, you better not tell them you got your butt kicked because you're going to get another one. You know what I mean? You know, that type of mentality, you know. But I wanted to kind of transition into this topic that we wanted to talk about, okay? You were telling me that the tragedy that happened in February 2006 and how that was life-altering.
Yes.
Can you elaborate and kind of share with our audience about that? Because I think that's something that people need to hear about.
Give you a quick little backstory. In February 2006, I was working for a contractor in L.A. We were working ungodly amount of hours. I kind of had carte blanche to do. I was handed a stack of work and said, "You got till Christmas to get this done." It was a very large box filled with work orders that needed to be done before Christmas. So, and Christmas came and went. I got it all done, and then subsequently I was given another very large box and said, "Get this done by March," or whatever. Mm-hmm. So off we were, working 32-hour shifts, pretty much nonstop. And I was working a lot. Mm-hmm. We were, catching shut-eye in the trucks. And unfortunately, I was involved one night in a car accident on the freeway. I fell asleep, mm-hmm. is what happened. I fell asleep. I remember getting on the freeway. I fell asleep and slouched with no seatbelt on and hit the gas and ended up hitting a car. What they said, I was doing 180 miles an hour. So obviously, it was a fatal accident. Mm-hmm. The person in the other car, did not survive. And it was just a tragedy. It was, I did have a BAC of .09. Mm. So, and I think that right there is something that I got to live with every day. Mm-hmm. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about it. There's not a day that goes by that I don't regret the decision that I made. And I paid dearly for it. I ended up taking a prison sentence of 24 months. I ended up doing 22 months because I went to fire camp. Mm-hmm. And some of the hardest work I've ever done in my life, basically fighting fire with no water.
Wow.
During that time, we fought grass fires in Lancaster. We fought the Getty Center fire when the J. Paul Getty Center caught on fire, that entire mountain. We spent about 14 hours up there, mm-hmm. hiking, cutting line. So it was the hardest, and I was already a journeyman lineman. Mm-hmm. I had been topped out a little over 5 years at the time. Mm-hmm. So I was already pushing a crew, and then that happened, and it was devastating. It was one of the hardest things. It was a kind of a long court process, mm-hmm. And I ended up, being sentenced, and I had a date to turn myself in, and I had to say goodbye to my kids. I remember I put them in the bathtub, and my daughter was 8 at the time, and I gave her my cell phone, and I told her to keep, here, you can keep this, and I had left some messages on there for her, so once she figured out how to use it, she could read them. But it was, I had to say bye to them, and off I went to, serve my time. It was terrible.
Wow. And how did that really, like what are some of the things that incarceration, how did it affect your family as far as, like, its dynamic? How many kids did you have at the time? You know what I mean? And, how did that affect everybody?
Yeah. So my oldest son,
Mm-hmm.
he was living in Oklahoma at the time. He was going to school, so he didn't really, he wasn't really affected, I would say, by it. I mean, he knew about it, but he was kind of already doing his own thing.
Mm-hmm.
And my two kids, they were 8 and 5. My daughter was 8, my son was 5, and he hadn't even, he might have been 4. I don't think he turned 5 yet. He was getting ready to start school that year, and I was going to miss that, his first day of school.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they were young enough, to not. I mean, kids are resilient, right?
Yeah.
The amount of resilience that I see in the kids nowadays is it's unbelievable. These kids, they can bounce back, and thank God Mom was strong, and Mom stood by me the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
And we kind of broke it to them easy. I was gone for a little bit before they kind of realized what was happening, and then it was just a tough time. It was a sad time in the Loya household, for sure.
Oh.
My brother, who was also in the trade, both my brothers who were also in the trade, they were a big help. They were a huge help taking care of, moving the trailer and getting it back to storage, and taking care of the house and cutting the grass and stuff like that. They really helped out. They really stepped up and helped out. So just, if it wasn't for family, I mean, it would have been really tough. My wife didn't work. She was a stay-at-home mom. After this was all said and done, we ended up losing everything but the house. We basically had to start over from scratch, and by the grace of God, we were able to keep our home, but everything else went away.
And I wanted to ask you, Mike, like, what was your thought process during that? I want to read you a quote, okay? We had a past guest on here. He's world famous. His name's Dr. Billy Allsbrooks. He's a motivational speaker and stuff like that, And one of the things he said was, "Your thinking is a factory of life. What product are you producing?" How was your thinking during that time? Was it, I mean, obviously, I mean, you're a human being, so it's probably very negative, you know what I mean? And self-loathing and all these other things, you know what I mean? Like, can you explain that? Like, what was going on in your thought process?
Yeah. Okay, I did make sure we bought our house at a good time.
Mm-hmm.
We were able to refinance before this happened. I had some people in the the loan industry that were friends and family, so we were able to refinance and pull some money out, some equity that my wife, it was going to be ramen and saltines, but she was going to be okay. And I think integrity. I think if I'm integrity, it was a time of self-reflection for me. I never thought that it was the end. I knew that, with the help of family, that I was going to get through it. I was bound and determined to fix it. Mm-hmm. I wasn't going to let it, define me. Mm-hmm. So no, there was no self-loathing. There was a little bit of self-hatred. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There was a little bit of, name calling, like personal name calling to myself, like, Mm-hmm. But there was never a time when I just thought this was over. This was it. I was always hopeful for fixing it. I was always hopeful for, making it right. Mm-hmm. Paying my dues and getting back and being better than it was before.
Mm-hmm. And it's amazing to see how, like with people, normal, you know what I mean? Grief is a big thing, and it's good to see that you didn't allow that grief to hold you down.
Yeah. Well, there was definitely grief. There was definitely, there was a time that, like, for months, it was hard to sleep. Mm-hmm. It was hard. It was hard to look at myself, in the mirror, brushing my teeth or whatever. It was just, mm-hmm. There was just a lot of, there was a very bad choice that I made. a mistake that I will live with for the rest of my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not ashamed to talk about it, because
Mm-hmm.
it was something that was the most difficult thing I think anybody could go through, is surviving what should have been a fatal accident for me. I wasn't even wearing a seatbelt,
Mm-hmm.
and that car saved my life. God saved my life, and I don't want to let him down. I don't want to make it for naught.
Mm-hmm.
So I made a choice, sometime after, like about a year, I think, is what it took for me to finally be at peace.
Mm-hmm.
And I made a choice just to not let it be for naught, not let it be in vain. Just, I wanted to do whatever I could to help.
Mm-hmm. And that's very admirable of you to do that. To overcome. That's overcoming. You know what I mean? And that's something that everybody wants to hear about. You know what I mean? Because, like you said, you didn't allow this to define you. And yeah, you had grief over it. Yeah, you sounds like you suffered from survivor's. You know what I mean? Remorse and all that stuff. So you mentioned God, right, Mike? During that time, did you find yourself seeking God in those hard moments? And how did that work out?
At times, yes. I mean, prison is, it took that. It took me, it was almost 2 years before before the date came where I had to turn myself in. So it took me that long to finally seek, the Lord or God or Jesus or whatever. When I got there, I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know what it was going to be like. I had heard stories, but nothing will prepare you for what it is. You lose all freedom, all of it. You lose all dignity, self-respect. Might as well just throw it out the window. It's not a pleasant place. There is, what did surprise me was there is genuinely good people.
Yeah.
Like myself, that made bad decisions. And it's some of the most talented people, some of the most talented individuals I've ever met were there. I mean, guys that could draw portraits and make something out of nothing and, build these guys. Yeah, they got a lot of time on their hands. And I think once I saw what was happening in there, once I realized that this was not the best place to be, I think I was finally at peace enough and comfortable with myself to privately, pray and seek God and truly ask for forgiveness and just put everything in His hands, I guess, if that makes sense. It wasn't in a group setting. I didn't attend, the services there with a group setting. It was more private for me. But I definitely did, seek the words in red, if you will.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. And just such a moment like that is just so humbling. I mean, I did some time in Towers and Tent City in Maricopa County. And one of the things that I always remember is I would look out the little window that we had or wherever we're at, and I would think to myself, what a wasted life. You know what I mean? And then when you see, like you said, you see all these other people in there, and there's some good people in there, you know what I mean, that, like you said, just got crossed. You know what I mean? Wrong place, wrong time. One of the guys I was in jail with was with his stepdad, and they were playing Russian roulette, messing around with a gun. Well, it was loaded, and he turned his dad's head into a canoe, 357 Magnum. And he was in there. He had just turned 18. And it was just, you could just see the total fear in his eyes. You know, we were on lockdown in Towers Jail because they were having race riots, you know. And in our little pod, you know, he was just always freaked out because, you know, he was a young guy. He was only 18 years old. You know, he didn't know what the heck was going on or what and what he got himself into. And it was just sad to see all those things, you know, because you pick up on that. You know, I don't know what it is, but you can pick up on what people are going through, you know what I mean, when they're being real, you know. And I just remember some of those moments like that, you know what I mean. But I like you, I read the Bible from cover to cover like 2 or 3 times while I was there, you know what I mean. And I didn't go to a setting where you're going to jail or, you know what I mean, like a church setting or nothing like that. It was just very personal. And I think during those times, that's when God started really trying to get a hold of me. You know what I mean? He started trying to really say, hey, man, you're going the wrong way, you know?
I I agree with you 100%. I was raised, growing up, my family was very religious. My grandma talks to God every day. Mm-hmm. And I was brought up in a Pentecostal church. Mm-hmm. So it was, you know, speaking in tongues and dancing in aisles and, you know, confessing to everybody, you know, with as the Holy Spirit would fill these people, they would, you know, profess their whatever was coming, you know, whatever was being said to them mm-hmm. was how they felt, you know, get up and testify, you know, in front of everybody. And that was never, it did. I mean, it was a little shocking, like, you know, mm-hmm. being young and seeing this, but for me, it was more personal. Like you said, it was more of a finding a personal relationship on my own time, on my own terms, coming to the realization that I'm not Superman. Mm-hmm. I'm not unbreakable. You know, I'm not the be all end all. And that I do make mistakes. Mm-hmm. And in fact, I'm probably going to make more. I know I'm going to make more, but being able to own, mm-hmm. take personal ownership in your mistakes and learn from them, and not just learn on a, you know, just you alone, but share, mm-hmm. like, you know, with your family, with your children. I messed up. I made a mistake. Mm-hmm. Here's what happened, and here's what I plan to do next time. You know, mm-hmm. and I think that it was just a moment. It was almost like an aha moment about 14 months in. It was just an aha, come to Jesus moment. Like, okay, I get it. I am just realizing that I'm human, and we err, we make mistakes, mm-hmm. but it's how we progress after that, and how we instill those lessons not just in ourselves, but in my children, and share it with my wife, and, you know, mm-hmm. teach them. It never really hit me, you know, learn from other people's mistakes. My dad used to tell me that all the time. You know, look what your uncle did, right? Like, yeah. You got to learn from other people's mistakes. But it never hit me until that moment. It was truly an aha moment, mm-hmm. and it was reading the Bible. It was while I was reading, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, and it's crazy too, because, like, I mean, I agree with you 100%. For me, it didn't really set in either. You know what I mean? I still had a life of rebellion even after that. You know what I mean? I still was drinking. I still was partying. You know, even after I became, you know, a born again believer and everything else, you know, the only difference that happened with me is that I had this air about me, like, kind of like holier than thou. You know what I mean? Like, oh, I'm a Christian. What are you? You know what I mean? And
right.
It wasn't until all this stuff started happening in my life where God started really working on me, to where I'm like, why am I out here? Why am I away from my family? Why is this happening? Why is this happening? You know what I mean? And all these different choices I make, you know what I mean? And that was my aha moment, is it's your choice. You know, God didn't do this to you. It's your choice. You had a choice to do right or wrong. Choose life or death. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And once you actually come to that realization that it's your choice and you stop blaming people, that was my aha moment. I was just like, wow, this is all on me. It's always been on me, and that helped me with a lot of the obstacles that I had to face. You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. I understand. And I this isn't mine. I read this somewhere, but it is 100% true. You cannot change behavior by simply changing behavior. We have to change the context, whether that be the people you surround yourself with, the friends you keep, the behavior, the narrative that you place on yourself, or the daily narrative that you do, whether it's just changing a morning routine, or, they say it takes 7 days to create a habit. Well, for 7 days, get up and go to the gym, or get up and go walk around the block 7 days in a row, or whatever the case may be. And I think for me, those words really hit.
That was a great quote. Where did you get that from? That was actually really good. I like that.
I don't remember where I got it from.
But it resonates. You know what I mean? It really hits home. My old man used to always tell me, show me your friends and I'll tell you who you are.
This is true.
And you're absolutely true, and you hit that. You know what I mean? I think Jim Rome talks about who you surround yourself with. If you got 4 millionaire friends and you're the fifth one who hangs out with them, well, guess what? You're going to be the fifth millionaire and stuff like that. You know what I mean? I think he's the one that said that. But anyhow, long story short, it's absolutely true. Who you hang with, you're going to be like that person. You choose to hang around with successful people that are doing right things, then you're going to be successful. I always thought it was kind of funny just being on the right of way where these young guys were taking marriage advice from these guys who had 3 or 4 divorces. Kids were estranged from them. And I think to myself, why the hell would you want to take advice from somebody? That's like me trying to take advice from somebody who's had, 6 or 7 bankruptcies, and I'm going to take money advice from them. Why?
Right.
It never made sense to me, So, definitely, watch who you hang around with, right? I wanted to ask you, how did coming out of prison, Mike, how did that affect your parenting style?
So, okay. Like I talked about earlier, I used to think that I was untouchable. I was young. I was fairly good at what I did. I made foreman. I was good at leading a small team. I was good at making those decisions. Everything at work, everything work related, I made really good decisions. But at home, there was no gratitude. Everything was, for me, was taken for granted, whether that was the love my children had for me, the love my wife had for me, the love, my mom, my brothers, my dad. It was all taken for granted. And I think upon coming home, I immediately went to work to try to obviously make up for lost time, to try to make up for, the 22 months that I missed. But I think gratitude is my parenting style leaned more towards a sense of trying to teach my children to be grateful, not for material things, not for material possessions, but to be grateful for things like freedom, sunshine, friendship, family, love, that kind of stuff. Just to be thankful, and not, giving them chores, giving them structure, holding them accountable. I think I never did that. It was always, I'll pay somebody to do that, or I'll hire a cleaning lady to clean, whatever. We'll hire a gardener. But it's not about that. It's having that and I kind of went back to how my dad raised me. It was, if there was weeds to pick in the backyard, we didn't hire a gardener to do it. I went out there and did it.
Mm-hmm.
I went out there and did it. If there was, a fence that needed repair, I went out there and did it. And I think I every time there was a project to do around the house, whether it was, we did have to fix the fence, the wind blew it over, I always involved the kids in it,
Mm-hmm.
just so they can, if there was breaks when my daughter got her first car, she helped do the brakes,
Mm-hmm.
and she got dirty. So I think just trying to teach them to be grateful
Mm-hmm.
for the mundane, everyday things, and not just take things for granted. I think that was the biggest thing that I brought home.
Mm-hmm.
Was
that gratitude, right?
The gratitude. Yeah.
And I could totally see that, just coming from being in incarceration and stuff like that. I mean, one of the things that I heard you say was sunshine. I mean, how many times do we take that for granted? And people don't understand that.
Uh-huh.
When you're incarcerated, you don't really see the sun. They kind of disorient. Well, at least the jail I was at, it kind of disorientated you from time. You know what I mean? They didn't really let you know exactly what time it was because you never really saw the sun. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and if you do, it's when they tell you
Exactly.
You can go see the sun.
Yes.
You don't get to just, hey, I'm going to go outside for a minute. You can't do that. And I think that was, like I said, about 12 or 14 months in, I finally realized that I was not in charge. I was not in control. I had zero choice.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the choice I had was whether I was going to drink, make instant coffee, or if I was going to go to sleep when the lights went out, or turn the light on and read. Like that was, my choices were limited to my personal space. Mm-hmm. And I think that hit the hardest. And I wanted to make sure that, my children were equipped with the tools to recognize when they need to show gratitude, or when they might have to step outside of their comfort zone to express gratitude if somebody is showing them a new way, or even just trying to express kindness or friendship. They need to be grateful for that and learn to recognize it, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a big point, is that recognition. You know what I mean? Because, we live in a world right now where when someone's nice to you, immediately you're thinking, okay, well, why are they being nice to me? What do they want? What do they want? Agenda? Exactly. You know, and I think that's how we've been conditioned as a culture. Why are they being really nice? And there's really genuine people out there. I learned that firsthand when I used to go to Missouri a lot, and at a farm out there. I have a really close friend of mine. He owns 500 acres, and we shared this mountain and stuff like that. And those are some of the nicest people I've ever met, dude. They didn't lock their doors when they left. They would go on vacation for like 2-3 weeks. They would not lock the front door, just in case the neighbor needed to go and get some sugar or something. They left the keys in the car. They thought I was weird, dude, because here I am. I'm showing up. I'm locking my doors. You can hear the beep, beep. You know what I mean? And they thought I was completely weird. They're like, we're not going to steal. And in fact, they got kind of offended. They're like, we're not going to steal from you. We don't steal. Like, it's just a habit, dude. I live in, Albuquerque, New Mexico, bro. Your car, you don't lock it, it's gone within 2 minutes. You know what I mean? And that's fact, So it was kind of interesting to see how people lived in different parts of the country. And there is still that instilled in people, you know what I mean? Where they're just genuine, nice people, It's
hard to find.
It is. And you definitely got to be, wise as serpent and gentle as doves. Absolutely. I think DMX said it best. I don't know if you listen to DMX rap or whatever, but they had a big old deal on him where they're interviewing him, and he's like talking about trust. And he's like, okay, if you have a snake, trust that it's going to bite you, but trust. If your friend's a thief, know that he's going to steal from you, but trust that. You know what I mean? You're not going to change him. Just be wise about that. Don't leave your stuff unlocked around the dude. You're not going to change him.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But just be aware.
It, there's the parable or the fable of that is I think it's the scorpion and the frog, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
The scorpion tells the frog, I need to get to the other side of this creek. Can you take me there? And the frog says, no, you're a scorpion. You're going to sting me. And the scorpion says, I really need to get to the other side. I will not sting you. You know, if I sting you, we're going to drown. We'll both drown.
Mm-hmm.
And the frog says he finally agrees and takes him, and they get halfway across, and the scorpion stings him. And as the frog is, dying, he says, why'd you do that? The scorpion says, because I'm a scorpion.
All right.
And so you're right. It just goes hand in. Yeah, it's we just got to learn to, like you said, recognize.
Mm-hmm.
When genuine. I believe, and my wife gets on me all the time for saying this, but I truly believe in the genuine goodness of people.
Mm-hmm.
And I tend to offer trust immediately until you give me a reason not to. And I believe that most people are, a vast majority of the people are just genuinely good people.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times it's misguided based on surroundings, or they're misinterpreted, or maybe they're just not understood. And I think doing time, on a level at one point on a level 4 yard with hardcore criminals was, an eye opener to realize that it could be anybody.
Yeah.
It could be anybody. We all, have the potential to be put in a situation where we make a bad choice.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a detrimental choice that'll affect the outcome of the rest of our lives. And it's how we respond in those situations. It's how we react. We can't choose the things that happen around us. We can't control the decisions that people make that directly affect us. What we can choose is how we react to those situations. And that we always have that choice, how we react. And I think that's, that's one of the biggest takeaways, is how we react to situations that might not be, in our best interest, that we sometimes find ourselves in.
Mm-hmm.
And just the choices that we make in response to those moments is what defines us, is what identifies our character as human beings, as individuals.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just a big thing with me. And I try to teach that to my children. We talk about it all the time, content of character and reactions to things that occur, how you react.
Yeah, and you hit the nail right on the head. The only thing we can control is ourselves and how we respond. I think a lot of that is ego too. I think a lot of people have ego and they don't die to it, and it gets the better of them. And next thing you know, you're operating in pride. I got stabbed when I was 14 years old by a 21-year-old. Okay,
My
and
goodness.
he sent me a letter. He was in prison later on, and I'd already went to the military and stuff like that, and came back. And that whole decision he made there totally changed the transition of my life. Okay, I mean, I wanted to go to school, I wanted to wrestle, I wanted to go to Boulder, Colorado Buffaloes, stuff like that, and that changed. Next thing you know, I'm going to the military because, for lack of better words, I hated people. I didn't trust people. I wanted to be able to defend myself, so I wanted to go to the military and learn how to kill people. That was my thinking as a child. That's a child's thinking. So I went and I did all that. And later on in life, he wrote me a letter. He was in prison again. He had shot some guy in the face. Guy lived, but, he got incarcerated again. And he wrote me a letter, and one of my friends had just gone out of prison. And he's like, hey, man, I have this letter for you. I want to give it to you. I've been holding on to it. So I read it, and he talked about how during that moment it had shaped everything in his life for the worse, and how if he could go back, he would change it. And he didn't blame me for not forgiving him, and he just wanted to say he was sorry, and that it was his ego. He felt very jaded that a 14-year-old, I used to wrestle and box. Okay. One of my wrestling coach was actually a professional boxer who fought Sugar Ray Leonard and stuff like that. So he taught us how to box and stuff. And so we're pretty tough. And needless to say, I got in a fight with this kid. I defended myself. I mean, he wasn't a kid; he was a man. And he felt very jaded because of what had happened, And he stabbed me. He let his pride and his ego get in the way because he felt ashamed. And in that moment, he stabbed me, almost killed me. And it changed the whole course of his history, of his life and my life. Because of that decision right there. And that just goes to show what you're talking about. We can't control what other people do, but there's always an outcome. It's that ripple effect.
Yeah.
And I kind of wanted to transition because you had talked a little bit about, prison and stuff like that. I want to move back to how did your record, because I know a lot of linemen, myself included, and a couple other friends I know, they actually, spent a lot of time, 14 years, I think, in the Texas state prison system. And he's a GF over in Texas right now. But how did that record affect your ability to provide for your family?
So that's a great question. Mm-hmm. When I did get home, mm-hmm. there was that I needed to do, court-wise, system-wise, parole and I had a parole officer that would come to the house, and mm-hmm. It was unsupervised, so I got to do what I needed to do. I had to get permission to get a job. Mm-hmm. Basically, they had to approve it, and so it took about 3 months to get. I had to get my Class A driver's license back. So that took a while, mm-hmm. and then when I did finally, I didn't have a commercial driver's license. I was able to get my regular driver's license back. That took a month or so, and I had to redo all the testing and everything. And then once I got that, obviously most of the calls in California for a commercial driver. Yeah. You got to be able to drive, a digger or a bucket or haul a trailer, and I didn't have that. So I was limited to what I could take. And when I did get the job, obviously you got to fill out the new hire paperwork, and you got to that question, have you ever been convicted of a felony? And that was time I had to say yes. I had never been in trouble for anything. Mm-hmm. And that checking that box, and then I had to disclose, of course I get the questions, okay, now what is this? And now they want to do a little bit of a thorough, check. And not everybody knew on the job site. I went to work for a contractor that worked mostly in substations. Mm-hmm. And at the time we were working for the Department of Water and Power. It was a 500-yard, and you have to pass a background to get in there. Mm-hmm. And so I was there probably a month. I had to work extremely hard to make up for the character flaw that I felt mm-hmm. was given to me, first impression-wise. Oh, this guy, he's been to prison, whatever. Yeah. It's probably just going to be a pile. And so I had to, it was a conscious effort to make sure I didn't offend anybody, to make sure I said please and thank you and excuse me and little things like that. Mm-hmm. Just to be polite, to be genuine, and to work as safe as I could, as quickly as I could. And it didn't take long. It was a couple months there that the background check finally caught up with me, and I had an opportunity to move up and to do a little job close to my house. It was just I think it was a breaker, 69 kV breaker change out in a little substation here off the freeway in Corona. And I jumped at the opportunity. They asked me about 2 months in, they asked me if I could do this job. I had no idea how to do that job. Mm-hmm. Never done 60 kV breaker change outs, but they were going to give me an inside wireman, another lineman, and a grunt. and I think we had 5 breakers to change out. And I said, yeah, let's go. I can do it. I can do it. And then that was it. I was sucked in after that. And, I was a foreman for them, and then I was a GF for this contractor. And I was there 7 years. It was the first job I took when I got out. I was able to get my CDL back eventually, and I could have, they had me going everywhere from Calexico, or El Centro, which is on the border there, east of San Diego on the border, Mexican border, all the way to San Francisco.
Wow.
San Mateo, Hayward, Martinez, everywhere in between. The Central Valley, Bakersfield, Huron, everywhere. San Luis Obispo. I was all over the state for the next 7 years. And, I always had to work. I always felt like, at least, for the first few years, I felt like at any moment the rug could be pulled out underneath me, and I didn't want that to happen. And so I worked really hard to build my reputation, because that's all we got as linemen, right? We all know this. It's all we got is our reputation. When you take a call, or when somebody knows you're coming to the yard, somebody there knows you, somebody there knows somebody that knows you, your reputation gets there before you even set foot on that yard. And I had to work really hard to make sure I was making good decisions and doing the right thing. And I was lucky.
Yeah.
I was fortunate. I was lucky to have that contractor that gave me the opportunity, knowing my story, and giving me the chance.
No, for sure. And you're absolutely right. Your tools will, your reputation will get there before your tools do. That's one of the sayings they always tell us, And with that being said, I wanted to ask you this last question, brother. We're running out of time here. Looking back, what would you have done differently, and what advice can you give to young men?
Okay, I'll tell you a story. Let me ask you a question. If you were given $84,600 at the beginning of every day, and you were told to spend that $84,600 every single day, because at the end of the day it all went away, but the following day you got another $84,600, would you spend that? You would work your butt off to spend that $84,600 every day, right? Because it's coming the next day, and it doesn't carry over. You can't keep it.
Absolutely.
You'd work hard. So that's how many seconds we get in a day. We get 84,600 seconds every day. We don't get to keep them. We don't get them back, but they start over every day. So if we look at that, and it goes, it's just being grateful. Gratitude, not just appreciating what we do have, appreciating what, God has given us, or what, freedoms that we have, family that we have, friendships that we have, the little things, right? Like not taking your family for granted, not taking time to recognize how special things are around you. I think that's the one thing I would have done differently, is not take everything for granted. And advice that I would give to somebody who's, exhibiting any kind of reckless behavior is see that reckless behavior is a known risk, right? It's a known, we know what we're doing has consequences, potential consequences, and we're well aware of what those consequences might be. So I think reckless behavior, if you're exhibiting that, or if you feel like you need to do some kind of reckless behavior, I would say talk to somebody. Talk to a brother, a sister, a friend, a coworker, your pole partner, your bucket buddy, whatever it is. Talk to them and say, hey, dude, like this is what I've been thinking, or these are the thoughts that I have. Because sometimes just kind words from a friend can go a long way. Just somebody to listen to, or somebody that'll listen to what you have to say. I would say that would be the advice. Just talk to somebody. Don't hold it in.
Again, I just want to thank my listeners out there. Keep being show up dads, and just thank you.